the government issue pot. I think it's safe to touch it now, I'm not absolutely sure about that. However, if you come down this way a little, I want to show you a room which has been restored to the way they were when the wing was built in 1939. Come in, plenty of room. See, plenty of room. Come in, folks, do come in. Come into my parlour. Yeah, I don't say that part, it tends to upset people. All right, that's it. We've got a few more. Plenty of room. Plenty of room. See, they could have kept a lot more people in this place than they actually did if I'd been in charge. Okay, so this is the way the rooms looked back in 1939, or to the best of our knowledge anyway. So we have the parquetry floor, which is really quite fashionable. The walls are painted psychiatric green, for want of a better description. All the psychiatric institutions from a very early era, right up until about the late 1980s, I think, were all painted inside this green colour because it was considered a calming, restful colour, and they wanted the patients in as calm and rested a frame of mind as they could possibly get them. Now, a primary consideration in looking after people in these institutions was the prevention of suicide. So you'll note that there's nothing in this room that a person could commit suicide with. There's no light, it's on the outside, controlled by the nursing staff. No basin and taps to have a wash, no hooks on the walls to hang your clothes. There's nothing except, as you've already thought to yourselves, because you're a very intelligent group, I can tell, what about the glass in the windows? And you're absolutely right. But at night, the nurse would lock this door across the window. Pardon me, I'll just get you a little bit. Like that. Now just imagine yourself being locked in this room from round about 7 o'clock at night till round about 7 o'clock the next morning. Well, that door locked across the window, that door there locked, of course. I think it was lights out at 7 o'clock. If you weren't a bit off when you first came here, I think you'd be totally nuts after you'd been here a few weeks. In all seriousness, I believe you have to feel for these people. They were here for a good reason, there's no doubt about that. But in so many ways, it would have been hell on earth. The next morning, after the patients had gone off about their day's activities, the nurse would lock the door back against the wall again to let the sunlight in during the day. Another suicide prevention technique, once again up until the 1980s, was that the patients had to strip off at the door before they came into the room at night. They would strip off all their clothes, leave them in a pile on the floor to put on again the next morning, and so that the nursing staff could go through them looking for contraband. They would come into the rooms naked. They weren't allowed to bring anything into the room with them at all. Not a book to read or a pad and pencil to write with or anything of that nature. The only thing they were allowed to bring, if they were very lucky, was a small prayer book or a small New Testament. And I think the only reason they ever had those is because that flimsy paper is good for rolling cigarettes with. And the one thing they were allowed to bring, for obvious reasons, was a pot, like the one we saw up in the front room there. And we've been told by the nursing staff that they fairly frequently had to be pretty damn quick to duck or step aside in the morning. Because quite often the patients would step out of the room in the morning sort of feeling a bit grumpy, and the first thing they'd do is they'd pelt their pot at the nearest nurse. And if he didn't duck or step aside, he wore the contents, believe me. And we've been told that there was a curious sort of odour pervading this place for most of its life, which fortunately seems to have gone now. And another, something else I was about to tell you, but it seems to have, it's gone right out of my head. No, it doesn't matter. There was no, as a matter of interest, there was no heating in this place until the 1950s. So you can imagine what it was like in the middle of winter before that. It would have been absolutely freezing. And we've been told by the nursing staff, if they didn't turn the heating on very early in the season, they were just wasting their time. You couldn't overcome the cold of this place once it had set in. So as I said before, you really have to feel for these people. Oh no, there's a couple of other things I want to show you in the West Wing. once again, there's too many of us to sort of line up and have a look in this room all at once, so I'll tell you about it.